After Series 1's staggering success, Russell T Davies, Phil Collinson and Julie Gardiner were under immense pressure to continue attracting high viewership. Following Christopher Eccleston's abrupt exit from Doctor Who, David Tennant would take on the role as the 10th Doctor. As a child, he had been attracted to the show, so playing the role of the Doctor was a dream come true for the talented actor. This was a reunion between writer Russell T Davies and David Tennant, as David had worked on Casanova before Doctor Who. Production would ask David to abandon his native Scottish accent in favour of an English one, and Tennant would ask costume designer Louise Page for his outfit to feature a long brown coat, and Converse shoes which he was fond of. Following Series 1's popularity, a Christmas special was commissioned, set to introduce David Tennant's Doctor. The 10th Doctor triumphantly awakes at 39 minutes into the episode, and the long waiting time really makes you appreciate his appearance, as his incarnation is on full display, really showing his full range as an actor. You really feel he's revitalised after a long nap and recent regeneration, ready to face anyone who challenges him. Tennant is given some great witty dialogue to chew on that he completely nails. And through Rose Tyler, we are guided through the Doctor's change in personality. Rose feels lost without the Doctor, and we feel in her headspace before the Doctor is back in action. The Doctor's confidence becomes translated into a newfound confidence of her own, as she comes to terms with this new incarnation of the Doctor. The 10th Doctor feels like a far more traditional hero than 9. 10 is arrogant and more self-consumed than his predecessor. He's never at a loss for words, and isn't the type of Doctor to take a break. He's always in your face doing something, and is more hyperactive than 9, less closeted and reflective. Tennant completely dominates the screen after resting for so long. Notably, the 10th Doctor also feels more aligned to Rose in personality, opening up a new aspect to their relationship. The episode does have some dark moments from the 10th Doctor, but mostly it's just a fun story that you don't have to overthink. The episode was a definite success, bringing in 9.81 million viewers. Following the Christmas special, there's a sense that the Doctor and Rose are now on the same wavelength after his introduction. Their dynamic is looser and more carefree. However, an episode that shakes this dynamic up is School Reunion. In Series 1, RTD carefully avoided major callbacks to the classic series. However, Series 2 changed that by bringing back Sarah Jane Smith. Sarah is a prior companion who's been left behind by the Doctor, allowing Rose to see what happens to the people he leaves behind, until they adjust back into ordinary life. Sarah's return could have easily been a cheap nostalgia grab, but it really pushes the characters of Sarah Jane and Rose forwards. Rose is already very attached to the Doctor and becomes jealous when realising she's only the next in a line of many. Her meeting with Sarah Jane is crucial because it prepares her for the end of the line, confronting Rose with the ugly truth of travelling with the Doctor. Sarah brings in a jealous and bitter voice to the story, derived from her fondness for the Doctor and their history. It's nice to see catty remarks between Rose and Sarah turn into friendship over the course of the episode, altering their dynamic for the better as they find common ground. The plot in this episode is pretty lackluster, but the character interactions are simply fantastic. David Tennant's real-life joy at seeing Sarah Jane really comes through in the episode, a beautiful reunion between these old characters, even if a wild contrivance they come across each other. Even if you don't know Sarah Jane from Classic Who, her scenes still land, conveying the sheer scope of Doctor Who's history and the tragedy in the Doctor moving forward. The callousness the Doctor shows to Sarah over leaving is a bit dark, but this fits well for the 10th Doctor, a character less burdened by guilt than 9. Examining the repercussions of the Doctor leaving Sarah so abruptly was well needed, and it's understandable Sarah found that so difficult after the Doctor effectively dumped her back into ordinary life. The exploration of the Doctor's infinite lifespan brings an underbelly of tragedy to his character. highlighting how much the companions help his mental health. He puts them in the face of danger, but he also needs them to bring out the best in him as a character who really thrives on that companionship, informing his change and development. This is great writing because these qualities are universal. They're not going to be confounding to a general audience because we've all felt isolated at one time or another, and often friendship pulls us through. The Rose-Doctor romance feels tragic because we all know it can't last. The Doctor will outlive Rose and must eventually move on, but Rose will struggle to move on from the Doctor, a character who has really reshaped her life. This tragedy's great character work, it really brings a sense of a ticking clock. All of the Doctor's companions must face the fact that their trip will expire eventually, and more often than not, they'll be left heartbroken. The episode builds up the sense of a primary school really effectively, from the boredom of children in classes to the less than stellar food for lunch. Basically, the plot is not well developed, but I skip over this fact, enjoying the rich character interactions, and the menace the Krillitane threat provides. The God Complex type story could have been really interesting if turned into some kind of allegory. For example, children could be easily manipulated by teachers. Plot thread isn't given much further thought, simply progressing the story. Viewing figures for this episode reached 8.31 million. The girl in the fireplace realises the French historical setting beautifully, giving it a grandiose tone and scope to it that's quite unique. In the tone setting for the episode, the word bandied around was romantic, and that certainly comes across in this episode. There's something very fairy tale about this story and its larger-than-life characters, playing off of our most childish nightmares and dreams effectively, juxtaposed with a somewhat adult romance story. It's a classic time travel tragedy with a strong emotional core. The mashup of historical imagery with the cold metal of a spaceship is really creative and well balanced. Seeing the Doctor and Renette's relationship transpire on screen from childhood to adulthood is effective, creating a strong attachment to Renette, leading up to her unfortunate fate. The Doctor essentially stalks Madame de Pompadour throughout her life, enravelled in a France fantasy instead of figuring out how the pieces fit together. The time differentiation is set up well so the audience can see the signs for the ending of the story. If possible, the Doctor would take Renette along on his adventures immediately, but the time dilation between past and future prevents this. Every second for the Doctor is far longer for Renette. Despite this, she remains patient and optimistic, not allowing her hope to be drowned out to time. And clouded by fun and romance, the Doctor lost sight of his logic, coming back to Renette who had long passed, waiting for him after all that time. Admittedly, the Doctor's a little quick to fall head over heels for Renette, which isn't something I buy, but that's a nitpick that fuels the key tragedy in this story. For someone called a Time Lord, he too is helpless against the laws of time in this situation. The intimate mind meld between Renette and the Doctor is a great character building scene. It fleshes out more of the Doctor's past, illustrating his lonely childhood, and it allows Renette to see and understand him, endearing her to his presence. The Doctor becomes something of a legend to Renette, a hero saving her from the deadly clockwork monsters briefly passing through her life. And although the Doctor-Renette story is the focus, Rose does have some effective scenes, where she takes the Doctor's position, comforting Renette. Rose's down-to-earth, relatable nature plays off this pompous character well. It shows us that Rose has had enough experience of the Doctor's wisdom to occasionally recreate it, offering a new dynamic and perspective. The central conceit that clockwork robots need a creative brain like the great Madame de Pompadour's to restore their ship is a very intriguing idea. These malicious-seeming robots aren't necessarily evil, they're just doing what they think they must to repair their ship, even if that means dissecting human beings. The Mickey, Rose and the Doctor trio is also reminiscent of a style Moffat would write Amy, Rory and the 11th Doctor. It's also very similar to the 11th hour in hindsight. And although Mickey and Rose are in this story, they're pretty much relegated for the episode. In all honesty, it would be more interesting if there was more of a drama between Rose and the Doctor, given their relationship so far, with Rose's jealous side causing a barrier to a relationship the Doctor probably shouldn't have. The Doctor casting off Rose and Mickey for a good chunk of his story, seemingly forgetting them as he becomes lost in fantasy, just further emphasises how human this Doctor is. He can treat others selfishly when he loses sight of the wider picture. It's just difficult to get over the fact the Doctor just abandons them though, seeming a bit of a stretch even for the 10th Doctor. I mean, he's conveyed just how much Rose has meant to him. If we just take it on face value as the Doctor chasing love in the past and forgetting his friends, it's not a good message, not painting the Doctor in a positive light. The Doctor bathes in the rich warmth of France, and he just leaves his friends in a cold and barren future. The contrast is telling. And Moffat focuses more on comedy and romance than examining the implications of these actions, which Russell probably would have. 10 comes dangerously close to failing to rescue his friends in times of peril, still off the heels of French party life. For my tastes, the Doctor's comedy is a little over the top, lacking his serious nature until the latter half of the story. Clearly, fun in France mixed with romance is not a good mix for the Doctor. The ending where the Doctor faces the fact Renette has died is truly tragic. Until the bitter end, she held out hope the Doctor would whisk her to the stars. Although sad, it reminds us how love can persevere. It's really a somber scene that has great writing and acting, with a fairy tale tragedy vibe. The Girl in the Fireplace was viewed by 7.9 million people on broadcast. The Impossible Planet and the Satan Pit has great atmosphere and tension. It's a really spooky two-parter that's a highlight of Series 2. The dingy, run-down appearance of the base is a perfect setting. It's rich in atmosphere and doesn't overcomplicate the plot, giving this story a central focus. The episode efficiently and swiftly introduces us to the Sanctuary base's inhabitants, characters surprised at random visitors out in deep space. We feel real stakes in the episode after an earthquake ensures the TARDIS is lost, meaning the Doctor and Rose must ride it out on this lonely, distant base. If any danger comes calling, there's no running away. It's not painted as a place you'd want to get trapped, being very stripped down and functional. And the Doctor and Rose effectively become crew members for the time being, with Rose taking this remarkably well. She's obviously prepared for this possibility in her travels with the Doctor, and we see that she's grown from that frightened and confused figure to confident and inquisitive. Rose shadows the Doctor's image of resolve in the face of uncertainty, and the removal of the TARDIS allows Rose and the Doctor to reflect on what a normal life together would be like, fitting in with the romance of Series 2. It's a great character scene that has an understated romance to it. It just cements Rose's complete loyalty to the Doctor, the clear connection they've built up. In this two-parter, the Doctor shows a lack of empathy towards the Ood, whereas Rose doesn't. This story shows off some of Rose's more positive attributes in contrast to the Doctor. It's really unethical and quite sad that the Doctor loses sight of the Ood in favour of the demon in this story, as the Ood are just as deep a concept to explore. He essentially ignores the Ood's status in order to further his thrill of adrenaline and mystery. This was an idea Russell T Davies coined for this story, really exploring the Doctor out of his depth. Ood are treated as an everyday accessory rather than living beings. They're basically slaves bred to serve. Rose is the exception, giving them further thought, showing far more empathy than the Doctor for the Ood. She relates to one of them working in a job she once had serving food, and engages in touch and small talk to try and reach out, treating them like the sentient beings that they are. However, this empathy works well in the latter half of his story, as the Ood later become an intimidating collective consciousness. The voice of the devil personified in a creepy army. The idea alone is chilling. Exploring literal demons is quite untapped in Doctor Who, and it's chilling to see the possessed Ood become savage monsters. There's a dichotomy, because you want to see the Ood free from their shackles, but possession isn't free either. It's just another method of control. Importantly, loss is given enough time to gestate in this story, and there are prominently camp scenes where this is well explored. The Doctor is really vulnerable to help everyone from their doom in this story, and the death of young Scooty feels somber because it's given weight and time to resonate. She's not some character immediately killed off. Time is given to establish a threat and expand the story, with every character death given a moment for you to dwell on. The controversy of religion is tackled well by leaving much to the viewer's interpretation instead of laying out one opinion. The story never feels stretched, as you're left wanting more from these episodes than given. Some of the imagery in this story is just evocative and powerful, which makes this a memorable two-parter in a mostly weak series. It's great to confront the Doctor with an entity that confounds even him, matching his age. It naturally intrigues him. However, the resolution does feel a bit unsatisfying, almost playing it safe after building up to a climactic face-off. Leading up to such an ambiguous and vague ending feels disappointing after such a meticulous build. Perhaps the devil was too giant a concept to be tackled satisfyingly, and we don't find out any motive from this beast. Still, it's a really strong two-parter. The Impossible Planet was watched by 6.32 million people, and The Satan Pit was watched by 6.08 million. Love and Monster sets up that this episode will be very light-hearted early on, with Elton's vlogs and a Scooby-Doo style chase. It's an episode that feels unusual, sorely lacking the Doctor and Rose's engaging chemistry. Elton is depicted as a bit of a loser, someone who's quite lonely and in love. The idea of this character is quite charming, but the performance and written execution leave a lot to be desired. Elton's someone desperate to know more about the Doctor after encountering him in his past, and through this journey the Doctor brings him to a community of like-minded individuals. Individuals who express their opinions, hobbies, and of course ideas about the Doctor. It essentially becomes a fan club of friendship. Love and Monsters gives fans a reflection of fandom in the characters that culminate to form a group. And just like us, these people are ordinary, until being sucked into the weirdness of a Doctor Who universe. For such a comedic and campy episode, the characters are very likeable. Victor Kennedy brings a darkness to this group, however, an outside element that begins to remove the fun from this group. He turns their hub into an office environment, essentially. Most of the people we meet have a life outside of chasing the Doctor. They coalesce as like-minded individuals. In contrast, the Absorbaloff represents someone obsessed with the Doctor, breaking up the group and removing any fun from the fandom. Although this is a great commentary, the lack of a Doctor and silly tone really prevents this episode from being really great. It's a shame because there's a great concept underneath that's been executed poorly. As the episode continues, people begin to disappear from the group, with laughingly bad excuses coming from Kennedy. Anything threatening or scary about this development is really undercut by the episode's light-hearted tone. It feels like a very childish episode, with very little of interest happening. Though I must say Jackie getting to know Elton is actually really sweet. It's tainted by the fact he's using Jackie to get closer to the Doctor, basically manipulating her. Jackie manufactures ways to keep Elton around. She's clearly very lonely after Rose's departure. And the heartbreak Elton causes Jackie is a really bitter end to their interactions, conveying why lying and manipulation is wrong, especially someone left behind by her own family. I've always liked Jackie, but giving her character this kind of development and seeing her go through the pangs of romance for it to break off bitterly is really down to earth. It's performed really well and feels very grounded. It really makes me feel a lot of sympathy towards Jackie. When you look through this lens, it's a great way of giving more depth to a secondary character. The core concept of fandom bringing people together and making a difference is really beautiful. However, this concept isn't executed well. Much of the downfall of the episode is Peter Kay's ridiculous performance. It really brings down his scenes. Overall, the episode feels mixed and confused tonally, with serious moments really brought down by its farcical nature. Love and Monsters received 6.6 million viewers tuning in. After Billie Piper would decide to leave her role on Doctor Who, Russell would want to create an emotional departure to the foundational character of Rose Tyler. I don't believe this finale is as strong as Series 1, but it's still an effective cap to the series. The cold open with Rose implying she will soon die is very melodramatic. It feels like a manipulative trick when you know Rose will be fine at the end of the episode, emotionally distraught aside. I get that it's a metaphor for her life with the Doctor ending, but it doesn't land well from her, and doesn't make me feel any more dread going into the episode because it's telling instead of showing. It's a very artificial and melodramatic setup. This two-parter revolves around the Cyberman. First, they introduce themselves as ghosts, unbeknownst to the public, before revealing their metal skin and becoming a more deadly threat. Ghosts become an everyday occurrence across the world that people aren't frightened with, and it's clear something's deeply wrong with this development. There's a great exploration of grief, as Jackie rationalizes the ghostly Cyberman as a lost loved one. Deep down it feels wrong and twisted, but it pulls at the heartstrings. Jackie believing this ghostly figure is her dad is actually really touching. But it's also worrying because Rose believes her mum is going through mental health issues, before realizing she's just personified a ghost as someone she wants it to be, looking for a way to cherish her dad no matter how illogical it may seem. Notably, Jackie also has a great interaction where she calls out how similar Rose is becoming to the Doctor, voicing her concern that she'll eventually no longer be the daughter she once knew. This conveys how difficult it is for Jackie to see Rose become less attached to her, alienated as a mother figure. Although similar to Unit, Torchwood feels very classy and professional. If we go back to Tooth and Claw, we know that the Doctor and Rose's frivolous behaviour is what caused Torchwood to exist, and it's now becoming a foil for them to stop. I just love the repercussions here. Notably, the Doctor meeting Torchwood is rather funny, with them being overjoyed at his presence, clapping at his arrival. Also, Jackie has to pretend to be his companion, which allows for a lot of funny moments and just gets her a chance to shine. Torchwood is a great concept, with Yvonne Hartman's overtly patriotic nature not being a good match for controlling the organisation. It conveys how powerful organisations can be led blindly by idiots, and become a huge danger overall. However, the chemistry between her and the Doctor is great as he challenges her, realising how twisted she is over the course of his story. She enjoys the power of her position far too much. Apparently, Torchwood is all about making the UK independent, and is clearly a story that works against a patriotic nature. As a whole, we're better working together, not closing ourselves off and claiming superiority. The pacing in this episode is gentle, setting up Torchwood and the mysterious sphere well, with confrontational interactions between Yvonne and the Doctor that are entertaining. When the ghosts are finally revealed as the Cybermen, it feels thrilling, as they were introduced earlier in the series and come full circle in this finale. A return from Mickey and the climactic opening of the sphere serves as an effective and tantalising cliffhanger midway through the story. It introduces both the Daleks and the Cybermen to chew on, and the sass between the Daleks and Cybermen is fun, leading into a war between these two species. Rose really comes into her own, proud of the fear factor the Doctor presents to the Daleks. And bringing back the other Pete is effective as he assists the Doctor. Eventually, the Doctor comes up with a plan to attract anything that's come in touch with a parallel world in order to halt the Cybermen and Dalek threat. However, this means separating him from Rose. In the end, the Doctor forcibly teleports Rose away, realising she won't leave willingly. The breach is an epic visual as Rose fights to hang on, an epic set piece that ends in a heartbreaking farewell. Director Graham Harper was impressed by David and Billy's performances as they are separated. He said, "You must not forget you've got actors who need to be allowed to perform. They take on board the technicalities of what you want to do, they rehearse the technicalities, and then there's a moment when they want you to shush and allow them to perform." The Army of Ghosts received 8.19 million viewers, whereas Doomsday received 8.22 million. If you liked this video, please subscribe and consider joining Patreon. Links are in the description below. I would like to give a special thank you to Starfleet Sohail, who supports me on Patreon. You can find him at Starfleet Sohail on YouTube and Twitter. And as always, thank you for watching.